Kanva Dynasty. Section 5. Decline of the Kanva Dynasty and the Rise of the Satavahanas. c. 3,500 words. 5.1 Introduction. A Dynasty in Transition. The Kanva Dynasty, which emerged from the collapse of the Shunga Empire around 73 BCE, lasted a relatively short span of 45 years. Despite its political legitimacy and religious orthodoxy, the Kanva regime failed to maintain lasting control over Magadha and the larger Indian subcontinent. Their decline was marked by internal weakness, dynastic stagnation, and external pressure from rising regional powers, most notably the Satavahanas of the Deccan. This section analyzes the internal and external causes behind the fall of the Kanva dynasty and explores how the Satavahana Empire succeeded in expanding into Kanva territory. 5. 2. The later Kanva rulers and signs of decline. The Kanva dynasty had 4 known rulers. 1. Vasudeva Kanva, c. 73-66 BCE. 2. Bhumimitra, c. 66-52 BCE. 3. Narayana, c. 52-40 BCE. 4. Susharman, c. 40-28 BCE. While Vasudeva Kanva was a dynamic founder, his successors seem to have lacked charisma and administrative capability. Unlike the Mauryas or even the Shungas, the later Kanvas left behind no inscriptions, no edicts, and few coins, suggesting a loss of royal prestige and economic power. Dynastic weakness. The short reigns of later kings and absence of effective succession planning weakened the dynasty's stability. The Kanvas failed to expand territorially or suppress emerging regional powers. No major military campaigns or alliances are recorded, indicating a loss of ambition and political inertia. 5.2.2 Administrative decay. Administrative systems were likely localized, with real power shifting to regional elites. Local chieftains and vassals began asserting autonomy as central authority eroded. Brahmanical support remained, but ritual legitimacy was insufficient to maintain state power without administrative reforms. 5.3 External pressures and regional dynamics. 5.3.1 The rise of the Satavahanas. Originally feudatories under the Mauryas, the Satavahanas began to consolidate power in the Deccan Plateau, especially in Andhra and western Maharashtra. By the late 1st century BCE, the Satavahanas had formed a strong administrative and military structure, often rivaling the Kanvas. Under kings like Simukha and Satakarni the Satavahanas expanded northward into former Shunga and Kanva territories. 5.3.2 Indo-Greek and Shaka pressures. In the northwest, Indo-Greek kings such as Menander III had already challenged Indian political hegemony. The Shakas, western Kshatrapas, also posed threats from Gujarat and Rajasthan, disrupting long-distance trade routes and border control. The Kanvas, lacking a strong army, were unable to contain these foreign powers or prevent economic decline due to trade disruptions. 5.4 Military factors in the collapse. 5.4.1 Lack of a standing army. Unlike the Mauryas, the Kanvas did not maintain a vast standing army. Military duties were likely outsourced to feudal lords, weakening central control and strategic response. No inscriptions or texts suggest large-scale military victories or defense systems under the Kanvas. 5.4.2 Satavahana invasion. According to the Puranic records, Balipucha, a general or possibly a Satavahana noble, defeated the last Kanva ruler, Susharman. This marked the end of Magadha's political dominance in northern India for centuries. The Satavahanas likely absorbed eastern regions, including Pataliputra, without facing significant resistance. 5. The fall of Pataliputra and cultural shifts. 5.1 Decline of the capital. Pataliputra, once the political heart of India, declined due to neglect, administrative collapse, and shifting trade routes. The once grand Mauryan capital became a provincial city, with much of its economic and cultural activity transferred to Vidisha, Ujjain, and Pratisthana under new powers. 5.5.2 Brahmanical and Buddhist realignment. With the fall of the Kanvas, Brahmanical orthodoxy lost royal sponsorship, although it remained socially dominant. Satavahanas, while tolerant of Brahmanism, also revived Buddhism, especially in the western Deccan and Andhra. This transition led to the reflourishing of Buddhist architecture, such as the Amaravati and Nagarjunakonda stupas. 5. 6. Transition from Kanva to Satavahana. Rule 5.6.1 Political integration. Satavahana kings adopted Brahmanical rituals to establish legitimacy in northern India, even while supporting Prakrit language and Buddhist art. The transition was marked more by co-option than violent conquest, suggesting a gradual integration of Kanva territory into the Satavahana fold. 5.6.2 Economic revival. The Satavahanas reinvigorated long-distance trade both inland and maritime. With control over western ports, they revived commerce with Rome, Arabia, and Southeast Asia. They issued inscribed coins, revived urban economies, and supported guilds and artisans. 5.7 Legacy and historical assessment of the decline. 5.7.1 Historical silence. The Kanvas' sudden disappearance left them largely forgotten in later historical records. Unlike the Mauryas, whose legacy was revived by Ashokan inscriptions, the Kanvas had no monumental or literary preservation. They are remembered mostly through Puranas, a few coins, and secondary Buddhist and Jain literature. 5.7.2 Continuity amid collapse. Despite political collapse, the cultural, religious, and administrative norms established by the Kanvas persisted under the Satavahanas. Their fall marked the end of North Indian Brahmanical monarchies for a time, as political dominance shifted south and west. 5.8 Conclusion of Section 5. The Kanva Dynasty's decline was a result of internal administrative stagnation, weak military structure, and the rising power of the Satavahanas in the Deccan. Their inability to adapt to new regional dynamics and resist external threats resulted in the quiet collapse of one of the last Brahmanical powers of ancient Magadha, yet their brief rule served as a bridge between empires, carrying forward cultural traditions while making way for new political orders. Kanva Dynasty, Section 6, Historiography, Sources, and Modern Interpretations, c. 3,500 words. 6.1 Introduction to Kanva Historiography. The Kanva Dynasty occupies a curious position in Indian historiography, a dynasty known more for its absence in the historical record than its presence. Modern understanding of the Kanvas is derived from scattered textual sources, limited numismatic evidence, and fragmentary archaeological data. Historians have long debated their historical legitimacy, cultural importance, and political relevance, given their short reign and sparse legacy. This section explores how ancient texts, coins, archaeological remains, and modern scholarship shape our understanding of the Kanva dynasty. It also addresses the historiographical challenges of reconstructing their story in the absence of grand monuments or detailed chronicles. 6. Two primary sources, literary and epigraphic evidence. 6.2.1 Puranic accounts. The Puranas are the most significant textual sources for the Kanvas. Texts such as the Vayu Purana, Brahmanda Purana, and Bhagavata Purana briefly mention the Kanvas and list 4 kings: Vasudeva, Bhumimitra, Narayana, and Susharman. These references are chronological, genealogical, and ritualistic in tone, offering little historical detail. 6.2.2 Buddhist and Jain texts. Some Buddhist Jatakas and Jain texts mention contemporary political scenarios, though not the Kanvas directly. Indirectly, they help confirm the presence of Brahmanical monarchies and urban centers in the Gangetic Plain during this period. 6.2.3 Lack of inscriptions. The Kanvas are not known to have issued royal inscriptions, unlike the Mauryas or Satavahanas. Their absence from pillar edicts or land grants suggests either a limited bureaucratic apparatus or loss of records. 6.3 Numismatic evidence and its interpretations. 6.3.1 Coins of the Kanva rulers. Coins attributed to Bhumimitra and Narayana Mitra have been found primarily in eastern India. These are punch-marked silver and copper coins, often bearing symbols like trees, bulls, or geometric shapes, lacking detailed portraits or titles. 6.3.2 Historical value of coinage. The coins indicate continued urban trade and economy, recognition of sovereignty in key regions, adoption of existing monetary systems. Scholars suggest that the lack of innovation in Kanva coins may reflect political conservatism or brief reigns preventing numismatic evolution. 6.4. Archaeological evidence and urban decline. 6.4. One urban sites, Pataliputra and beyond. Archaeological layers in Pataliputra, Vaishali and Ujjain show signs of urban contraction during the Kanva period. Lack of monumental construction, palace remnants or stupa expansion contrast sharply with earlier and later dynasties. Excavations have uncovered domestic pottery, coins, and craft debris, affirming economic life but not imperial grandeur. 6.4.2 Religious architecture. No known temples or religious edifices from the Kanva era survive. The Kanvas seem to have continued existing temples or supported Brahmanical rites without new monumental patronage. The absence of architectural ambition may suggest limited resources or a conscious choice for ritual minimalism. 6.5 Challenges in reconstructing Kanva history. 5.1 Scarcity of evidence. Compared to the Mauryas or Guptas, Kanva history suffers from few textual references, absence of monumental architecture, minimal epigraphic footprint. This leads to significant reliance on Puranic and numismatic interpretation, which presents problems of dating, authenticity, and ideological bias. 6.5.2 Interpretive divergences. Some historians treat the Kanva period as a transitional phase, while others downplay its importance due to lack of source material. Marxist historians have viewed the Kanvas through the lens of feudal fragmentation, while nationalist interpretations once emphasized Brahmanical revival. 6.6 Scholarly debates and modern perspectives. 6.1 Were the Kanvas a legitimate dynasty? A common question: were the Kanvas rightful rulers or simply usurpers? Traditional Brahmanical texts grant legitimacy due to their Gotra, Brahmin lineage, and religious patronage. Modern historians argue that while they emerged as court ministers, their military control and political recognition cemented their authority. 6.6.2 Cultural continuity or regression. Some scholars argue that the Kanva era was one of cultural stagnation. Others suggest that despite limited resources, they maintained social continuity, religious orthodoxy, and regional administration. 6.6.3 North-South transition. A growing number of scholars interpret the Kanva fall and Satavahana rise as part of a shift in power. From North India to the Deccan, the decline of the Kanvas marked the end of Magadha-centric empires until the later Guptas. 6.7 The Kanvas in modern memory and education. 6.7.1 Textbook treatment. Indian school history textbooks often mention the Kanvas briefly, if at all, usually in lists of dynasties or as a footnote to the Shungas and Satavahanas. Their lack of dramatic events or imperial monuments has resulted in minimal popular interest. 6.7.2 Academic revival. Recent academic work seeks to re-evaluate the minor dynasties like the Kanvas to better understand India's transitional political phases. Interdisciplinary approaches, combining archaeology, numismatics, and comparative historiography, have opened new pathways for research. 6.7.3 Cultural projects. Few museums or public history projects have focused on the Kanvas. However, regional museums in Bihar, West Bengal, and Odisha preserve Kanva period coins and terracotta pieces. 6.8 Conclusion of Section 6. The Kanva dynasty, though obscure and brief, remains a significant puzzle in the study of early Indian history. Historiographically, they serve as a test case in how historians reconstruct the past with minimal sources and without monumental grandeur. Despite their limitations, the Kanvas represent a bridge between imperial Mauryan power and emerging regional states, embodying the resilience of political tradition even in eras of decline. Their study challenges scholars to read history not only through what survives, but through what has been forgotten, ignored, or erased. Kanva Dynasty, Section 7, Influence and Legacy, c. 3,500 words. 7.1 Introduction. Measuring a subtle legacy. Though the Kanva dynasty's political rule was short-lived, c. 7328 BCE, their influence was not entirely extinguished. Their governance, religious affiliation, and administrative continuity helped sustain the cultural and political traditions of Magadha and north-central India during a time of transition. Their impact was felt not through grand monuments or imperial conquest, but through the maintenance of order, ritual orthodoxy, and bridging empires. The Kanvas upheld the Magadhan model of monarchy, continuing traditions of centralized kingship rooted in earlier Nanda, Maurya, and Shunga administrations. Even without military expansion, they managed to preserve territorial integrity, especially around Pataliputra and central India. 7.2. Stabilizing a post-imperial world. Following the fragmentation after the Shungas, the Kanvas provided brief stabilization before the Deccan-based Satavahanas rose to prominence. Their period marked a pause in large-scale warfare and preservation of bureaucratic institutions, likely through local governance. 7.2.3 Influence on later dynasties. Although not directly emulated, the Kanvas provided a governing template, especially for smaller Brahmanical dynasties in eastern and central India. Their conservative priestly kingship served as a precursor to early Gupta ideals, which similarly fused religious legitimacy with political rule. 7.3 Religious legacy and cultural continuity. 7.3.1 Brahmanical orthodoxy. The Kanvas were strong patrons of Vedic rituals, Sanskrit scholarship, and Brahmanical philosophy. Their reign, though lacking temple-building evidence, reinforced religious continuity during a time when Buddhism and Jainism were dominant alternatives. 7.3.2 Revivalism over innovation. Unlike the Mauryas, who innovated through Buddhist patronage, or the Guptas, who fused multiple religious strands, the Kanvas were conservative revivalists. Their role was more preservational than reformative, focusing on ritual legitimacy, purity of caste lines, and traditional cosmology. 7.3.3 Seeds of religious polarization. Their overt Brahmanical leanings likely intensified sectarian divisions, particularly with Buddhist and Jain communities in eastern India. This tension set the stage for later ideological confrontations under Satavahana and Kushana patronage of Buddhism. 7.4 Administrative and economic traditions. 7.4.1 Bureaucratic inheritance. Though poorly documented, the Kanvas likely maintained Mauryan administrative divisions such as Janapadas, provinces, and Mahajanapadas, great realms. Local administration continued through village assemblies, revenue officials, and merchant guilds, suggesting administrative inertia despite dynastic change. 7.4.2 Guilds and urban crafting. Their coins and archaeological debris from urban sites indicate active craft guilds and artisan networks. The Kanva period witnessed a survival of economic complexity, even if large-scale trade or infrastructural expansion declined. 7.4.3 Coinage and fiscal traditions. Though simplistic, their coinage retained monetary stability, facilitating local transactions and tax collection. The punch-marked system they preserved continued into the early Satavahana period, proving influential in the standardization of Indian coinage. 7.5 Regional identity and cultural memory. 5.1 Eastern India's historical fabric. Though forgotten nationally, the Kanvas are part of the historical memory in Magadha, Bihar, and eastern Uttar Pradesh. Their reign is seen by regional historians as a continuation of Brahmanical dynastic authority before the rise of southern influences. 7.5.2 Influence on early medieval polities. Later dynasties such as the Palas, Maukaris, and later Guptas borrowed elements of Kanva-era governance, especially religious rituals and regional autonomy structures. Their lack of imperial centralization inspired local monarchies to replicate a light-touch rule within Vedic frameworks. 7.5.3 Cultural legacy and literature. While no direct Kanva literature survives, some early Sanskrit plays and commentaries from the post-Kanva era reference Brahmanical rites similar to those patronized during their rule. Their emphasis on orthodoxy likely influenced educational patterns in Vedic schools and gurukulas in the region. 7. A silent legacy, Kanvas in historical perspective. 7.6.1 A dynasty without drama. The Kanvas did not leave behind epic battles, grand architecture, or charismatic rulers, key ingredients for historical remembrance. Yet their role in sustaining civilization during a politically fragile time is significant. 7.6.2. A model of resilience. Their example demonstrates how small dynasties can contribute to continuity, even amid collapse and transition. They maintained the integrity of Vedic traditions while bridging the northern imperial past and the Deccan-based future. 7.6.3 Lessons for historiography. The Kanvas challenge modern historians to rethink what constitutes influence. Their reign, though brief and uncelebrated, illustrates how maintenance of traditions can be just as impactful as innovation or conquest. 7.7 Conclusion of Section 7. The Kanva Dynasty's legacy lies not in monumental glory, but in institutional persistence, ritual continuity, and regional stabilization. They exemplify how dynasties can quietly preserve cultural frameworks and act as guardians of tradition in the shadows of great empires. Though rarely spotlighted in popular or academic discourse, the Kanvas formed a vital link in India's civilizational chain. Their silent legacy reminds us that the history of India is not only shaped by conquerors and reformers, but also by caretakers of heritage who ensured the survival of social order and sacred knowledge in turbulent times. Kanva Dynasty, Section 8. Comparative Analysis with Other Indian Dynasties. C. 3,500 words. 8.1 Introduction. The Kanvas in Comparative Perspective. In the long sweep of Indian history, the Kanva dynasty is often seen as a minor interlude, sandwiched between the more illustrious Shunga and Satavahana empires. However, this perception overlooks the significance of their reign when analyzed comparatively. To understand their unique position, it is essential to evaluate their governance, ideology, cultural patronage, and legacy against other dynasties such as the Mauryas, Shungas, Satavahanas, and Guptas. This section critically assesses the similarities and differences between the Kanvas and these other dynasties, offering a nuanced understanding of how even modest dynasties contributed to the subcontinent's political and cultural evolution. 8.2 Kanvas and the Maurya Dynasty. 2.1 Scale and Centralization. The Mauryas, 321–185 BCE, built the first pan-Indian empire, while the Kanvas ruled a small core region around Magadha. The Mauryas maintained a highly centralized bureaucracy, supported by an intricate espionage system, provincial governors, and a standing army. In contrast, the Kanvas likely retained a minimal administrative footprint, operating a decentralized and more ritualistic kingship. 8.2.2 Ideological Contrast. The Mauryas, particularly under Ashoka, emphasized Buddhist Dhamma, nonviolence, and social reform. The Kanvas reversed that ideological trend, reaffirming Brahmanical supremacy, Vedic rituals, and Varna-based social order. 8.2.3 Cultural Patronage. Mauryan architecture and art, such as the Ashokan pillars, Sanchi Stupa, and Mauryan rock-cut caves, marked the pinnacle of early Indian state-sponsored art. The Kanvas, lacking resources or vision for monumental art, left no known artistic innovations. Summary: the Kanvas preserved institutional remnants of Mauryan rule but lacked its vision, scope, and ideological inclusivity. 8.3 Kanvas and the Shunga Dynasty. 8.3.1 Dynastic Transition. The Shungas, like the Kanvas, emerged from within the Mauryan court system. Pushyamitra Shunga was a Mauryan general. Similarly, Vasudeva Kanva was a minister who overthrew Devabhuti, the last Shunga king. This pattern of court usurpation underlines both dynasties' internal consolidation, rather than popular revolution. 8.3.2 Religious Policy. The Shungas were known for their revival of Brahmanism, suppression of Buddhism, especially under Pushyamitra, and patronage of yajnas and Sanskrit learning. The Kanvas inherited this religious policy and continued the Brahmanical orthodoxy, though likely in a less aggressive form. 8.3.3 Military Capability. The Shungas fought back Indo-Greek invasions and retained substantial influence in central and northern India. The Kanvas, by contrast, seemed to have lacked any significant military exploits and eventually fell to the Satavahanas. Summary: the Kanvas were the ideological successors of the Shungas but were politically weaker and less active militarily. 8.4 Kanvas and the Satavahana Dynasty. 8.4.1 Geographic Orientation. The Kanvas were based in northern India, Magadha, whereas the Satavahanas arose in the Deccan and western India. The Satavahanas' expansion into the Kanva heartland marked a south to north power shift. 8.4.2 Religious Dynamics. The Satavahanas patronized Buddhism while also supporting Brahmanism, embracing a religiously pluralistic model. The Kanvas were rigidly Vedic, promoting orthodox Brahmanical values and priestly legitimacy. 8.4.3 Economic and trade reach. The Satavahanas were major participants in Indo-Roman trade, issuing elaborate coinage and sponsoring urban development in cities like Pratisthana. Kanva coins were basic punchmark types, and their economic footprint remained localized. Summary: the Satavahanas surpassed the Kanvas in political ambition, religious inclusivity, and economic expansion, ushering in a new phase of Indian imperialism from the south. 8.5 Kanvas and the Gupta Empire. 8.5 One temporal distance and re-emergence of the north, the Guptas, c. 320–550 CE, came centuries after the Kanvas but re-established northern imperial dominance. Like the Kanvas, they promoted Brahmanical ideology, but unlike the Kanvas, they fused it with military conquests, literary patronage, and artistic brilliance. 8.5.2 Cultural revival. The Guptas sponsored the classical age of Sanskrit literature, including Kalidasa and Aryabhata. The Kanvas preserved Sanskrit rituals but did not initiate any known cultural renaissance. 8.5.3 Political legacy. The Guptas, while more expansive, followed the Kanva example of religiously legitimized kingship, ritual coronation, and hereditary monarchy. Both upheld the idea of Raja Dharma, kingly duty, rooted in Vedic values. Summary: the Kanvas acted as ideological forerunners of the Guptas, though lacking the Guptas' visionary statecraft and cultural achievement. 8. 6 minor dynasties, compared: Kanvas, Mitras, and Maukaris. Like the Mitra rulers of Mathura and Maukaris of Kanauj, the Kanvas belonged to a class of regional Brahmanical dynasties. These rulers often emerged in the vacuum of larger empires and emphasized religious orthodoxy, ritual legitimacy, and regional autonomy. The Kanvas stand out among them for having briefly ruled Magadha, India's most prestigious political center at the time. 8.7 Comparative table, key parameters. 8.8 Conclusion of Section 8. When placed in comparative perspective, the Kanvas emerged not as a weak or irrelevant dynasty, but as a transitional power that preserved and transmitted key traditions in a fragmented political world. Their religious conservatism, regional governance, and symbolic continuity offered a bridge between imperial pasts and emerging futures. Though dwarfed in scale and ambition by the Mauryas or Guptas, the Kanvas occupy a unique position in the Indian historical mosaic, a reminder that even modest dynasties can play pivotal roles in preserving civilizational foundations. Kanva Dynasty, Section 9. Conclusion: revisiting the Kanva Dynasty's significance, c. 2,500 words. 9.1 Introduction. The problem of historical silence. The Kanva Dynasty, c. 73–28 BCE, though historically overshadowed by the Mauryas, Shungas, Satavahanas, and Guptas, offers a unique window into a period of transition in ancient Indian history. Their short reign, limited geographic reach, and sparse archaeological legacy have often rendered them footnotes in historical surveys. Yet a close analysis reveals their vital role as guardians of tradition, agents of political continuity, and symbolic heirs to Vedic kingship in a changing world. This concluding section synthesizes their historical trajectory, governing ideology, cultural relevance, and modern legacy, while offering broader reflections on how historical importance is defined. 9. 2. Reasserting the Kanvas in Indian history. 9.2.1 A dynasty of continuity. At a time when much of India was facing regional fragmentation, the Kanvas maintained order and ritualistic legitimacy in the ancient imperial heartland of Magadha. Their ability to inherit, rather than overhaul, the institutions of the Shungas and Mauryas preserved the continuity of governance, allowing later powers like the Satavahanas and Guptas to draw upon an unbroken civilizational thread. 9.2.2 The role of ideology. The Kanvas were not innovators but preservers. Their commitment to Brahmanical orthodoxy, Varna Dharma, and Vedic ritualism helped reinforce Hindu religious identity during a time when Buddhism and Jainism had strong social influence. This ideological stance offered an early model of religious statecraft, later echoed by the Guptas, who would synthesize political authority with cultural patronage. 9.2.3 Political modesty, symbolic power. Without the military exploits or economic ambition of the Mauryas or Satavahanas, the Kanvas occupied a symbolic role more than a strategic one. Their lack of expansionism can be seen not as weakness, but as a reflection of their caretaker ethos, holding together a crumbling polity through legitimacy and ritual. 9.3 Key contributions and enduring features. 9.3.1 Ritual, sovereignty, and kingship. The Kanvas revitalized the role of the priest-king, reaffirming ancient ideas of Raja Dharma, kingly duty, rooted in Vedic theology. They emphasized sacrifice, yajna, court ceremonialism, and lineage legitimacy, setting a precedent for future Hindu rulers. 9.3.2 Administrative continuity. Although not revolutionary administrators, they continued the Mauryan administrative divisions, preserving structures like janapadas and local bureaucracies. Their survival of institutional norms made them a link between imperial centralism and regional feudalism. 9.3.3 Cultural conservatism. Unlike the Buddhist innovations of the Mauryas or the artistic glories of the Guptas, the Kanvas resisted change, acting as cultural conservatives. Their emphasis on Sanskrit learning, ritual grammar, and priestly instruction left lasting impressions on regional gurukulas and Brahmanical schools. 9.4 The historical challenge, visibility versus significance. 9.4.1 The problem of evidence. The Kanvas suffer from a lack of extant inscriptions, monuments, and literary texts, limiting modern understanding of their reign. Much of their history is known indirectly through Puranic genealogies, numismatics, and later court references, which are often sparse or biased. 9.4.2 Historiographical neglect. Colonial and nationalist historiographies focused on great empires, sidelining transitional powers like the Kanvas. Modern Indian historiography has only recently begun to reassess the importance of smaller dynasties, recognizing their role in civilizational continuity. 9.4.3 Rethinking historical importance. The Kanvas force historians to confront an uncomfortable question. Is political duration the same as civilizational impact? Despite ruling for less than 5 decades, the Kanvas preserved essential components of Indian polity and culture that would shape the next 1,000 years. 9.5 Lessons and legacy. 9.5.1 Lessons in resilience. The Kanvas represent the quiet strength of maintenance, of those who keep the fabric of society intact during unstable times. They reveal how power without grandeur can still be historically valuable. 9.5.2 A model for transitional governance. Their dynasty offers a case study in how small-scale rulers can bridge the collapse of one empire and the rise of another. Their religious legitimacy allowed them to govern without massive armies or economic dominance. 9.5.3 Rediscovering forgotten narratives. The Kanvas are part of a larger tapestry of overlooked dynasties, alongside the Vakatakas, Kadambas, Ikshvakus, and Maukaris, that held India together between empires. Understanding their role encourages a more granular, decentralized view of Indian history, focusing on layers of continuity rather than episodic greatness. 9. Conclusion: the silent stewards of civilization. In conclusion, the Kanva dynasty, despite its modest footprint, fulfilled a crucial role in India's historical evolution. They inherited the religious orthodoxy of the Shungas, preserved the administrative legacies of the Mauryas, and provided the political legitimacy upon which later powers like the Satavahanas and Guptas would build. They were not architects of change, but custodians of structure, the stewards who maintained India's socio-political framework when it was most vulnerable. Their brief reign is a testament to the idea that not all contributions to history are loud or visible. Sometimes, Survival and continuity are the greatest achievements of all.